G'day everyone, it's Armin here, and today I'm going to talk to you about what the fuck is sound quality. This is a rant, and it's not scripted, it's just me just talking off the cuff. So throughout the past 20 years, my perspective has changed because my interests have changed a lot, an obscene amount. I want to start this by equipment. Like, when I talk about equipment, I'm talking more of the material world. Stuff like this. And these are really funny because the thing is, these headphones are so shit. I don't know if it's like my, genetically disfigured head that this broke. I don't know if you can see it very well. Whoever's decision to make these bits that hold the actual headphone in plastic, IQ 3 levels of shit. Equipment does make a difference, and if you say it doesn't, that's just really dumb. Because obviously, something like those $2 things you get from the those aeroplane headphones which you put on and it's like, wow, I can really hear audio quality, what it sounded like in the 1920s. And then, you get some decent headphones and it's like, okay, they do sound better. Like, anyone with functional hearing apparatus can tell the difference. But when you start getting to the mid-tier, high-tier territory, things start to become more shades of grey, right? And it's not really about one technically having better audio fidelity, which is like, how well it can recreate what the artist intended, really. It's more about are there differences between what you're listening to? Now, the easiest way to tell differences is between different headphones themselves, right? That's super easy. If it isn't, get good. But then the next level above that is telling the difference between different amps. If you're looking at a difference between a tube amp and a solid state amp, you should be able to tell the difference. It's really night and day. If you're looking at a difference between a solid state amp and another solid state amp, but completely different classes, you may be able to tell the difference. But if you're looking at two solid state amps that are nearly the similar class, it is hard. A lot of times I can't tell the difference between blind testing and those kinds of things, but some people can. Then when we talk about things like DACs, if you get a 10-year-old DAC and a current DAC and do blind testing or maybe even A/B testing, you may tell a difference. And that's a big may. And I myself in blind testing have only been able to make one blind test where it's statistically significant difference, where I've been able to tell between a really old DAC and a modern DAC, but between new DACs, I can't tell, and that's fine. When it comes to cables, oh my god, this is going to be really contentious, but sometimes I can tell a difference. Sometimes things can sound better, but I don't know if it's the actual properties of the cables themselves or other things, and I'll get to that later. Then we get to the source material, right? Is the actual source via Bluetooth and old school MP3 compared to a perfect Ethernet connection that's really, really high quality, 1 billion kilohertz at 1,000 bits, whatever. Well, you may be able to tell the difference if you have the right gear that can really take the little bits of data out and spit it into your face. Of course, there's lots of other things in the equipment world, but I don't give a shit. Let's go to more interesting topics. Now, let's talk a bit about mental state and sound quality, and how our brain and mood and brain interact to form audio. And this isn't some kind of crazy revelation, one of your stoner mates who just did DMT for the first time, and he goes up to you, it's bro, those atoms, right? What if they're galaxies, and when we split the atom, we're committing galactic genocide? It's not that kind of ranting. It's more of the fact that if you're happy, you're more likely to enjoy the music, more likely to sound better. If you're just interested and excited and you're really into this stuff, and it just will sound better. But if you've had a sad day and it's been just everything's a shit and you're feeling down, music's not going to sound that great, right? And also there's a lot of influence that our mind does, not just if you're happy or sad, but if you're anxious or agitated or overwhelmed, because that can affect the next variable, which is focus. Now, focus is a very interesting concept because if you're focused on the music itself, you will pick up far more details than if you're like listening to music and then like, you know, organizing some shit or like trying to plan some fucking holiday somewhere, whatever. It's like, it's going to be very, very different. That's because you're probably spending more neuronal resources just like trying to figure out what the hell you're listening to. If you're doing any kind of critical listening exercise, you can't have other things around you. But also, not just the external environment, but the internal environment. The internal environment is also very, 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 very important, because if you're anxious and you're thinking, or if there's certain pathologies like ADHD, or if you're being overwhelmed by the actual sensory experience that you're having, if all of these different things can actually interact and make you less aware of what's happening in the music itself, and it can also lead to less enjoyment, which links back to mood, and it's a fucking clusterfuck, and it's like no one's happy. The fourth variable, what was the fourth variable again? It was something like biases, right? Important. Now, I really want to talk a lot about this. So in order for me to explain biases, I need to talk to you about the placebo effect. So the placebo effect is if you believe a thing is going to do something, then that something is probably more likely to happen. For example, if I say, hey buddy, if you take this pill, you'll be less cringe, and you take that pill, there's a small chance you might actually be less cringe. Obviously, if someone gives you a pill and it's like, hey dude, this will fix your syphilis, and you take that pill, it's probably not going to Harry Potter its way into fixing your syphilis. Ultimately, the reason I talk about placebo is because that is an example and effect how cognitive biases, like biases are just basically things that you believe and that affect the way you experience reality, both internally and externally. And this is based on environment, upbringing, traumas. All of these things will affect what you perceive. And the way this is relevant to audio gear is massive, because a lot of audio companies know this, and that's why if you look at some really dumb things like those $10,000 USB 2 cables, right, which have got the most absurd bullshit that they write into their like little fact thing saying like, the cable has some kind of bullshit crystals alignment that magnetize themselves with the Earth's magnetosphere, and it's aligned with fucking Jupiter and the center of the cosmos, and 2012. I'm not trying to say that $10,000 USB cable won't make a difference, because it very well might. And at the end of the day, that's the only thing that really matters, right? Even if there is no objective measurable difference, if the subjective experience is different, that's the only thing that matters, right? And this is what a lot of people don't get. And it's like, if I get a patient, right, who's been to see some kind of, I don't know, some wacky doodle homeopath, and they feel better, who the fuck am I to say, like, all right, you know, oh, that's just absurd and stupid, whatever. If it's not harmful, right, apart to your wallet, but if it's generally not harmful and it doesn't make the patient go and do that kind of therapy for something important, and its consequences are like not high, who am I to say like, you know, you should stop doing that, right? If it genuinely makes someone feel better subjectively, that's fine. And this is what I don't like in a lot of the audio groups, when someone brings up a cable and you're such an idiot for spending $100 on an inch of silver-plated wire. Fuck, the dude's happy, man. Just let him be happy. At the end of the day, there's so many different things that we don't understand about even objective measurements of audio, that you can't say to a certainty that there's no difference. And doing blind testing, holy crap, that's another can of worms. It's very, very difficult. But if the dude's enjoying his stuff, just be like, cool, dude, enjoy. And if someone is asking, hey, is there a difference? And that's when you can sort of get a bit more objective and be like A and B and whatever. But again, just the very looks of something can make a massive difference in terms of how it sounds, which is insane. You see an amp that's got these pretty valves on it, it's designed so well, and you're looking at that while you're chilling on your recliner. It's gonna make things sound better. It does for me. And it compared to like if you have some shit box that was designed by like some 10-year-old in his garage, and even though that may be objectively better, the other one may sound better just because it's prettier. And same thing with cables. And this is why it's good to get pretty looking cables. At least for me, like I like feeling them and just looking at them and just like it does make the experience better for me. And I know in my brain that there probably is not any objective difference, but because the way the cable looks, because of the microphonics, which is like, you know, when it bounces on you and shit and you can hear the sounds, because of like, you know, how solid it feels and just like the texture, all of these things, it gives me a better experience. And that's at the end of the day what I want. Actually, shout out to my mate Marco, description in the link. He's not paying me or anything for this. He's just a great dude that makes like the prettiest cables I've ever seen. One thing I should always add to these is that being suggestible, like suggestibility is basically how easy you can form a bias in a certain thing. It's not based on intelligence. If you're suggestible, it doesn't mean you're dumb. It just means that you can be creative in a specific way and that you're a bit more open-minded, right? And some people are super intelligent, like really, really intelligent, can even rationalize themselves into certain biases. So it's not about that. That's why I really hate it when people say someone's dumb because they believe in a certain thing. That's just, it's nothing to do with that. It's just determined by the way your mind works and the way you can visualize and conceptualize different things. And that's fine. Another thing that forms bias in our minds in the audiophile world is price. It's so funny. Disclaimer, not that I'm actually going to do this, but I've always had this thought of just making some bullshit headphone company and getting like $50, maybe $100 headphones, making them look pretty, writing the most absurd crap into their description and selling them for like 10 grand. I'm pretty sure there'll be some people out there that say it's like the best thing they've ever heard in their lives, that they fucking cried when they listened to Beethoven on these things. And it's I would not be shocked at all. And it's mainly because if something is expensive, and this is not just in the audio world, a lot of things, like expense gives us the allure that something is better. It's just, you need to balance pursuing that high-end audio with the understanding of that some of this could be a placebo effect, and it could be because someone has biased you, like through reading a review, through looking at a price, through what it looks like, through reading the description, all these things, right? So you got to keep this in mind. Also, my other point is don't be a dick to people who are more on the subjective camp or more on the objective camp, unless someone specifically asks you, hey, like, is there an objective difference, or what is your subjective experience? Because remember, we're all dickheads here talking shit, and we're all trying to make sense of this whole concept of audio quality, and there's so many things we can't measure, and subjective experiences are themselves extremely fragile and variable. So let's just all chill. The substances that we take on medications can make a humongous effect on how we perceive the external environment. An extreme example is you get Dave, right? And you give Dave like the Ping Amigarang, and then you got like, you know, Steve, and you know, Steve is sober as hell. Like Dave, I think he's going to be enjoying the music a bit more, right? And that's because the neurochemistry that we have can make a massive influence over how we interpret music, and also how that links into emotions, and how music's also like the detail can be perceived, and certain drugs can make like more detail to be apparent because of the way you shift focus and etc. I'm not saying do drugs, because obviously, like, you know, drugs are bad, okay? I'm just trying to highlight the fact that neurochemistry in a lot of people who may have done drugs, they can easily identify, yeah, that has made a difference in how I've interpreted music, which furthers my point that there are more factors rather than equipment that determine the enjoyment of music and sound quality. Another example is pain, right? If you're in pain, that's going to make your mood worse, which is going to reduce your enjoyment of music. It's also going to make you distracted and uncomfortable, and again, leads to sadness. And there's physical factors. Let's say you have a middle ear effusion. So you got your inner ear, which is the nerve snail looking bit. Then you got your middle ear, which is like this space where the eardrum is and like some other shit. And then you got like the outer ear, which is the tube, right? Now, if you got fluid buildup in your middle ear, you got reduced ossicle vibration, and you got eardrum dampening, and everything just gonna sound crap. Some people could have like genetic ear problems. Some people could have like fucked up their hearing because, you know, they went to too many Slipknot concerts without earplugs, or they've had injuries, and who the fuck knows, man. There's lots of things that can go wrong with ears. I recommend everyone at least see an audiologist once, because you may not know how fucked up your hearing is. As you age, you do develop changes in frequency, your own microphone frequency response. That does change, and everything sounds a bit less bright and muddy because you lose that high end, like a high frequency cutoff. And it's like someone's just put an EQ filter there over time, and everyone's EQ filter knob turning is like different. I remember once I read a review by this guy, I think he was like 75 years old, and he was like saying the HD 800S was the only decent headphone he's ever heard, but damn, those headphones are bright as fuck. Even ear infections, wax builds up, whatever. Check your ears for wax. Don't do that cotton tip thing. I keep telling patients not to do that, but they do it anyways. Also, don't get your ears syringed out and shit. Actually get it suctioned out. See a decent audiologist and they can do that for you. Other minor variables are sort of like past experiences. Like if you are like a musician and you've played a lot of guitar or something like that, or you listen to a lot of live music, you sort of know what real sounds like, and you may develop a bias where I want to hear things that sound like reality. Or you might be like me and, you know, like that, but you also love that virtual reality aspect of like headphones, and I'm biased towards that. Also, genres of music you like have big bias. If you know, you hate metal, you're not gonna like the way metal sounds. If you hate rap, whatever. Again, there's more minor things like volume. Obviously, if something is a bit louder than something else, that thing that's a bit louder is gonna be perceived to sound more detailed and better and impactful and dynamic, right? It's also gonna fuck up your hearing, but you know, it's so much better listening to things loud. It's a problem. I need help. And like other things is, I should mention that may be important, is audio retention. Retention of how we felt or like how something sounded, like sensory memory, is not amazing. It's if you listen to something and you might be able to remember the tune, you might be even able to remember the notes, but exactly how good it sounded like is very, very, very difficult. And in reality, it's probably just a few seconds. You can remember all of that, like in accuracy. That's why you need to do like A/B testing. I've reviewed a lot of different headphones in my life, like written reviews, and I really struggle remembering what something sounded like. I actually have to go there at that point and listen, and then do A/B testing, get that on, get that off, and then do a blind testing.